This is David Hawkins again, DHI Enterprises, and today I wanted to talk a bit about the hard questions about the Sony a6300 that nobody seems to be asking. So I've got 4 questions lined up that I haven't heard anybody talking about. First and foremost, the big feature of this camera is the 4K video, supposedly downsampled from a 6K sensor to 4K, but my question is, how much 4K video are you actually going to be able to shoot? You see, the thing is, people get really excited about these specs and figures, and then when the camera actually comes out, you have one of those A7R2, oh, but by the way, you only record about 15 minutes or something and then it overheats. And you had all of this talk before that about all the specs and the low light performance and the autofocus and the in-body stabilization, and how is it that nobody noticed that or nobody was talking about it before the camera came out? So you had people go out and buy a $3,000 camera and they're all ready to shoot their big movie premiere, and the next thing you know, it cuts off 20 minutes after shooting or something like that, and then the next time it's 15 minutes and the next time it's 4 minutes, because of the overheating issue that apparently, none of the hundreds of photographers that had a chance to use this camera before it came out felt the need to talk about it. So that would be point number 1. Point number 2, will Wi-Fi remote control work on the a6300? Now, as we know, I have the a6000, and I was shocked to discover that you could not record video using Sony's Wi-Fi app. I mean, you could do it on the a5100, which there's tons of things the a5100 has that the a6000 doesn't. But you can't do it on the a6000, you can't do it on the a7, you can't do it on the original a7R. You can only do it on the a7R2, the a7S, and the a7S2. So will the a6300 correct that problem? Because that is actually a deal breaker for me. The original video that I shot was on my a7R2, and I used the Wi-Fi app to record, and I just assumed, since they all had basically the same apps, that they all had the same functions. And really, why don't they? Why can't I record a video over Wi-Fi with my a6000? Seems to me it should be a simple firmware update or anything, or an update with the app, but can't do it. Will you be able to do that on the a6300? Question number 3, everybody's talking about, oh, it's supposed to have this magnesium alloy body, and I think it has weather sealing or something. You've already had an entire room full of photographers. Seemed like it was maybe 50 or 60 of them at least. You had the camera shop guys down there and a handful of other photographers. So you have a lot of people who have already held this camera in their hand. Shouldn't they be able to tell you what the difference between the a6000 and the a6300 body is? I mean, is it heavier? Does it feel sturdier in the hand? Can they tell that there's weatherproofing? You have all of these people who have actually held the camera and used it, even though for reasons which should scare the hell out of you, Sony wasn't letting them go out with any of the footage that they took. Be that as it may, nobody's talking about the difference in feel and in the body between the a6000 and the a6300. But, for the price difference that we're talking about, that's something that I would really want to know. Everybody wants to talk about this 4K thing, but, 4K isn't new anymore. There are tons of cameras out there now that have 4K. You've got the Panasonic G7, you've got the GX8, you've got the GH4, you've got the GoPro can shoot 4K, and you've got a handful of 4K camcorders out there. So I'm not going to jump up and down and be excited just because this camera has 4K. I want to know what the improvements to the body really are. I want to know what it feels like compared to the a6000. Does it feel like the $600 camera that I already own, or does it feel like something that's actually worth $1,000, that's worth me going, you know what, forget full frame, forget the higher end a FE mount, I'm just going to pay $1,000 for an APS-C camera that's basically the exact same body as my a6000, which costs $600. That's something that people should know. Last but not least, there's this aging, what I call legacy tech. Sony's gotten just about all the mileage that I feel that they're going to get out of this flip down screen of theirs. You know, it's not touch screen, even though it could be, like they have it on the a6100, but it sort of starts to make you think about what other changes or what other remnants are left over from previous models. For one, their Wi-Fi suite is ancient, and you know, just the entire idea that they have, the idea of having apps on a camera is really cool. People should be able to make apps and, like, you know, develop the functions that they need that aren't already included with the camera. But the apps that they have on these Sony cameras are really old, and the fact that, you know, you can't record Wi-Fi is inexcusable. And, you know, little things like the menus and some of the layouts, they've been using a lot of this stuff ever since the NEX5. So my question is, how much of an overhaul are we really going to get in terms of user interface, in terms of making things simple? Because, okay, fine, we don't get a touch screen, but are they going to make the menus a little bit easier to navigate? Are we going to have more functions? Is there really going to be more to this camera, or are we just going to see that 4K and maybe like a little bit faster autofocus? So these are the questions that everybody should be asking now, especially in light of the RX100 which, you know, could only record up to like maybe 5 or 6 minutes worth of 4K video. You're talking about a body now that's sizably smaller than the A7R Mach II, which when it came out had this horrible overheating issue. So now you're talking about an even higher resolution image being downscaled to 4K. So how much of that 4K video are you going to be able to continuously shoot with the E6300? So these are the questions that I had, that I think everybody should be curious enough. You know, do you agree with me? Do you have any thoughts on this? Leave it in the comments. David Hawkins, DHI Enterprises. Peace.